of describing the spending of the public purse on important travel. That was one of the questions we asked earlier. Indeed, the man who asks the questions, or seems to ask them at Stormont, in relation to the spending of the public purse on travel and hospitality, is Timothy Gaston of the TUV, and he's on the line. Timothy Gaston, good morning.
Good morning, Frank.
You're not impressed with how much has been spent since February 2024. It's very close to £500,000.
Absolutely, 470,000 spent in international travel by Stormont departments in just over a year. That's certainly an eye-watering figure, and it's a lot more than I ever anticipated. But this is just the latest in the long-running attempts to keep tracks on what the executive and indeed Stormont is delivering for the people. We heard about, oh my goodness, we need Stormont back. It'll sort out all these problems. But it seems to be, since it has come back, the core element of it is making sure they look after themselves.
Yeah, but are they looking after themselves, or are they actually doing some very important work? Just look at one of them here. The trips include a £10,000 trip for 2 Department of Agriculture, Environment and Rural Affairs staff, 2 people to travel down to New Zealand for a visit to placement students from the Agricultural College Caffrey. So if, for example, teachers were out on teaching practice, students were out on teaching practice, the staff at the university would have to go to visit those members of their cohort who are on teaching practice, and they'd have to be monitored. So if we have 2 placement students who are down in New Zealand, would it not be expected that the Department of Agriculture would send someone just to keep a watchful eye?
Well, you picked up in the dairy department. Let's look at another example within the same department where 3 individuals, including the minister, he went to New York, the Climate Week, at a cost of $11,134. So this is the minister that is always telling us about net zero, and this is the minister trying to impose devastating cuts through his NAP proposals on the industry, while at the same time he seems happy enough for him and his officials to fly across the country to talk about net zero, to talk about Climate Week, but in practice it seems to be very different.
But is it not important? Is it not important for our minister to be at New York Climate Week, to be there at the cutting edge of saving the planet?
Why? Why is it important for our minister to be there? Why is it important for him to send officials to be there? I'm sure in this day and age, if somebody wants to be there, they could listen in via Zoom. Why is there so many of them has to go? I think it's one thing going to something about climate change. Why do you have to fly right across the world, which flies in the face of the message that week's all about? If you were so interested in climate change, why would you be jetting off to New York to hear about it? I certainly think there's other ways and smarter ways that the executive could be doing business, both for the ministers and the officials in their departments, instead of burning public money like this, Frank.
Okay, it's a very strong argument in relation to Climate Week. Why do you need to fly to it? As for other trips that the department undertook, £78,000 was spent on travel to an equine nutrition conference, how best to feed your horses, in Norway, a European Veterinary Emergency Congress in Sweden, and an implementation and enforcement of European law meeting in Macedonia. I presume these officials need to have a full understanding of, for example, how to feed a horse, but they believe that they can't do it from home.
Well, that's the strange thing about it. In this day and age, when we have so much modern technology, how we can't utilise that better beggars belief that they have to fly from Northern Ireland right across the world to understand and learn these things, whereas there's practical examples of online tools that you could learn just as much from or dial into these events. My goodness, it seems to be when the public's paying for it, there's no second thought given about how much this is costing to send people right across the world. It's a beggar's belief that Northern Ireland has to send people right across the world. We're not diplomatic, cutting edge deals here, there and everywhere. This is a case of people being cherry picked out of departments sent across the world when there's cheaper ways of getting the same learning for a lot less.
Yeah, but we need to be there, don't we? We need to be at the coal face to be fully briefed on what's happening. For example, the Justice Minister, Naomi Long, personally hasn't gone anywhere, but officials from her department have been in Brussels, Geneva, Amsterdam, Warsaw, Sofia, Zurich, Krakow, Stockholm, Frankfurt, Chicago, Vienna, Lisbon, Budapest, Texas, Boston, Barcelona, Copenhagen, Tallinn. It'd be easier to list the places they haven't been.
Well, that's it, Frank. But then when you are looking at, if you have to send these people, are we booking these conferences well in advance? Are we booking the travel well in advance? Are we going by economy class? There seems to be an element that people like to travel by business class. There's cheaper ways of doing things, there's better ways of doing business, and it certainly needs to be when it's public money.
And the list goes on. Most people have been somewhere. Most of the officials representing the various groups within government, offices within government, have been somewhere. And if any of them were available for a conversation this morning, I'm sure they could quite readily describe to us why it was absolutely vital to be there. If we followed your template, however, and this is the concern, Timothy, we wouldn't go anywhere, and we could be isolated in Northern Ireland. We could be navel gazing, just burying our head in the sand.
Well, that's not the case, Frank. I'm very clear that what would I do differently? Well, let's start with economy class as a standard, publish all details up front, and introduce strict guidelines in international travel. That's something that as a must. That's a good way to save money. That's a more prudent use of taxpayers' money. Yes, there's times we have to be places, but we have to look. If there's not a business case that stacks up for us to attend in person, then we shouldn't simply be there. If there's an alternative to dial in, no problem. Let's get the learning, let's get our officials up to speed. But at the same time, this argument of travelling right across the world to be at a conference, especially things like climate change, it just flies in the face of what that event is supposed to be about, and that's something I take great exception to. And
you do feel that we tend to allow our officials and our government representatives to be too comfortable when they travel?
Well, up until now, I don't think anybody has really been keeping a close enough eye on it. This is something the executive should be very prudent and very keeping a close attention to. It's been left to a backbencher such as myself and TUV, but it's certainly something that I will continue to do. That when people are booking flights, they're thinking about how does this look like. What does this look like in the public perception? Is there a way of doing it cheaper? And if there is, let's do it. Yes, by all means. I think of the Department of Economy attracting in foreign direct investment. Very, very important to go and meet businesses, encourage businesses to come across. But some of the rest of these junkets and some of the rest of these trips, it certainly doesn't stack up in my head.
But do some of the very busy government ministers, the hard-working government ministers and their officials, do they ever stop you in the corridor and say you're a thorn in the side?
No, there's some of them don't speak to me. I can understand why. But I'll continue to do what I'm doing, Frank. This is building on when we were asking about hospitality. This is building on when we were asking about photographers. So this is the scrutiny that's needed to be input and overseen in each of the departments. If the official opposition isn't doing it, I certainly will continue to be that thorn in the side, be that watchman, keeping an eye how the public money has been spent. We hear time and time again, there's no money for this, there's no money for that. Waiting lists are off the scale. Can't get money to fix our potholes. You name it. School buildings are falling down because we can't maintain them. But at the same time, there seems to be money for hospitality. There seems to be money for photographers and photographs, and there seems to be plenty of money for travel.